I need to tell you something that has been eating at me for the past 2 weeks. I have been driving to grocery stores, warehouse clubs, and ethnic food markets across 4 states, and what I am finding is making it hard to sleep. There are 11 specific foods vanishing from shelves right now, not slowing down, not getting expensive, vanishing, and the people who understand what that means are already loading their carts and saying nothing. Number 4 on this list was completely gone from every single store I checked in 2 different cities, not one can, not one bag. I asked the stock manager and he pulled out his phone, looked at the order system, and just shook his head. Number 7 is something that has been sitting in pantries for generations, but the supply chain behind it is cracking in a way most people cannot see yet. And number 9 is going to shock you because it has nothing to do with price. It is about something that is quietly disappearing from production entirely. If you are the kind of person who pays attention before everyone else starts panicking, hit that subscribe button right now. I track this stuff in real time. When the headlines finally catch up, you're going to want to already be stocked. Let's get into it. Food number 1, canned tomato paste, small 6-ounce cans. I'm going to start with something that seems completely ordinary. Tomato paste, the small 6-ounce cans. About 3 weeks ago, my neighbor knocked on my door and asked if I had any she could borrow. She had just come back from 2 different grocery stores and both were completely out. I told her I had plenty and gave her 4 cans. Then I went to check myself. The store closest to me had a full empty section with a shelf tag still in place. The store across town had 2 cans left. I bought both. So I started making calls. I reached a distribution rep who handles canned goods for a regional chain in my area. He told me that tomato paste in the small format has been on allocation for weeks. That is industry language for rationing. Suppliers are only sending partial orders. Stores get a fraction of what they request, and it moves out the same day it arrives. Here is why this is happening and why it is bigger than just tomato paste. California produces about 95% of processing tomatoes in the entire United States. 95% from one state, and California has been dealing with water restrictions, rising labor costs, and multiple processing plants that have reduced output or shut down entirely in the last 2 years. On top of that, the price of tin-plated steel for cans is up 40% compared to 2 years ago. So even when tomatoes are available, putting them into cans is more expensive and harder to do. Tomato paste in small cans is a low-margin product. Food companies cut those first when things get tight. Here's why this belongs at the top of your stockpile list. Tomato paste is the single most powerful flavor multiplier you can store. Plain cooked lentils become a stew. Boiled rice becomes a meal with personality. A can of mixed vegetables becomes something that actually tastes like food. Without it, everything in your pantry tastes flat. I know because I cooked exclusively from stored food for 2 weeks last winter during a personal experiment. By day 10, the absence of acidity and depth in every meal was genuinely demoralizing. Tomato paste fixes that problem for 2 to 3 years per can, sometimes longer stored properly. I check that shelf every time I walk into any store now. When I find stock, I take 12 to 24 cans without hesitation. I am at about 70 cans and aiming for 200. 6 months from now, that section is going to be bare and staying bare. The people who already know this are shopping quietly. Food number 2, dried chickpeas in bulk bags. This one I did not take seriously until I started looking at the numbers. Dried chickpeas, not canned, dried. The ones in the bulk bins or the 5-pound bags. I found them at a Middle Eastern grocery near me about 8 months ago. 20-pound bags for under $2 a pound. I bought 1 bag just to test. I started talking to a guy who runs a small import business that supplies several of those specialty grocery stores. He told me off the record that wholesale prices on dried legumes have been climbing for 18 months and that the big retailers are starting to reduce shelf space for bulk dried goods because the turnover is slower than they want. Less shelf space means less stock, means gaps appear faster when demand spikes. Here is what makes dried chickpeas extraordinary as a survival food: 15 grams of protein per cup, rich in fiber, iron, and folate. You can turn them into hummus, use them as a main dish, grind them into chickpea flour for baking, or even sprout them for fresh greens. And the shelf life is 20 to 30 years. I'm not exaggerating, 20 to 30 years with proper storage. That is longer than most people plan for anything. I store mine in food-grade buckets with tight lids and oxygen absorbers in a cool, dry place. I have 75 pounds right now. That cost me about $120 total. For 20 to 30 years of shelf life on a protein source that versatile, $120 is nothing. The smart move right now is to find your nearest Middle Eastern or Indian grocery store. Their bulk prices are a fraction of what warehouse clubs charge. Buy while the prices and availability are still reasonable. Food number 3, active dry yeast, vacuum sealed bricks. This one has been deteriorating for over a year, but it just hit a new level of bad in the last 2 months. I have been tracking yeast availability at 8 different stores since January. Every single store had at least 2 periods where yeast was completely gone for a week or more. Last month, 4 out of 8 stores were out of stock at the same time. I started digging into why. I found a published trade report from a North American Food Manufacturing Association that laid out the problem clearly. Yeast production capacity across the continent was scaled back after 2020, when the home baking surge was assumed to be temporary, but demand never actually normalized. More people bake at home now than before 2020. It became a permanent habit for millions of households. So baseline demand is structurally higher, but production capacity went back to pre-2020 levels. That gap is what you are seeing on store shelves. I called the customer service line of 3 major yeast brands, pretending I was a small bakery trying to plan my orders. 2 of them told me lead times had extended significantly, and one said commercial allocations were taking priority over retail packaging. That means the little 3-packs on grocery shelves are the lowest priority in the supply chain right now. Here is the critical thing most people do not know. The little 3-pack yeast packets last maybe 6 months on the shelf. In the freezer, you can push them to 2 years, but viability starts dropping. There is a better solution. Vacuum sealed 1-pound yeast bricks. When kept frozen, they last 5 years or more. You break off a chunk, bring it to room temperature, and it works perfectly. I bought 4 1-pound bricks. Each one cost about $6. That is the equivalent of more than 60 of those little 3-packs. I test a small amount every 3 months to verify viability. It has been perfect every single time. Think about what the world looks like without yeast. Flour might still exist, rice might still exist, but without yeast, all that flour becomes flatbread. Real bread requires yeast. Bread is not just calories. Bread is morale. It is normalcy. It is the smell that makes a house feel like a home. If that ability disappears, something important disappears with it. Food number 4, whole wheat, berries, 50-pound bags. I want to tell you about a conversation I had at a feed and grain store 3 weeks ago. I was asking about bulk grain availability, and the owner, a guy who has been running that store for 22 years, leaned on the counter and said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said the small buyers are disappearing. The people who used to come in for 50-pound bags every few months, they have stopped coming. Either they stopped caring or they already have what they need and they are staying quiet about it. Whole wheat berries are the most underrated long-term food storage item that exists. Here is the math. A 50-pound bag costs about $40. That bag contains approximately 80,000 calories. 80,000 calories for $40. 200 pounds, which is what I currently store, contains about 320,000 calories, enough to feed a family for 6 months. Total cost for 200 pounds was $160. The shelf life is 25 to 30 years, and the grain retains the ability to sprout the entire time. That means in a true long-term situation, you can sprout wheat berries for fresh greens, grind them into flour, or cook them whole as a grain. One ingredient that does three different things. The only additional piece you need is a hand-powered grain mill. I bought one for $75. That mill will outlast me. I store mine in 5-gallon food grade buckets with Gamma Seal lids and 2000 cc oxygen absorbers in each bucket. The oxygen absorbers prevent oxidation and insect activity. This is a setup that requires a small upfront investment and then virtually nothing for the next 25 years. Food number 5, canned sardines in olive oil. I want to tell you what changed my mind about sardines. I was doing a nutritional audit of my entire stockpile about 8 months ago. Spreadsheet, every item, protein per dollar, calories per dollar, shelf life. When I got to sardines, the numbers were so good I thought I had made an error. More than 20 grams of protein per can, a full day's worth of omega-3 fatty acids, calcium from the soft edible bones, vitamin D. Shelf life of 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer. Price at the time was around $2 per can. I double-checked 3 times. The math was right. The problem was I had never eaten a sardine in my life. I bought 10 cans and committed to working through them over the following month. The first 2 were genuinely difficult. The smell hit differently than I expected. But I kept going. By can 5, something shifted. By can 8, I was choosing sardines over other options. I also noticed something I was not expecting. My mental clarity in the afternoons improved noticeably during that month. I am not making medical claims, but the omega-3 connection is well documented, and I felt it. Here's what is happening to sardine availability right now. 3 years ago, a can of quality sardines cost about $2. The same can now costs $4 or more. That is a 100% price increase in 3 years. Multiple major fisheries have reduced their quotas due to overfishing pressure and climate-driven changes in fish migration patterns. I have noticed the sardine section at stores empty or nearly empty multiple times in the last 6 months. I prefer sardines packed in olive oil because the oil itself adds quality fat and calories. I keep 120 cans in my stockpile right now. That cost me about $250 total. For that amount of shelf-stable protein and omega-3 nutrition, that is an extraordinary value per dollar. If you have never eaten sardines, buy 5 cans this week. Try them different ways: on crackers with mustard, in a simple salad with lemon, mashed on toast with hot sauce. Find one version that works for you, because the window to stock them at a reasonable price is closing faster than most people realize. Food number 6, apple cider vinegar and white vinegar gallon jugs. This is the one most people scroll past, and that is exactly why the quiet preppers keep buying it. I started paying attention to vinegar about 10 months ago after I talked to a woman at a canning supply store. She was buying 6-gallon jugs of apple cider vinegar and 6 of white. I asked her why that much. She said she had not bought vinegar in 3 years because she already had plenty. This was her restocking run. Then she explained something I had genuinely never considered. Vinegar has an infinite shelf life. Infinite. The USDA confirms this. Properly stored vinegar does not expire. And what can you do with it? Preserve fresh vegetables without refrigeration? That is the big one. Vinegar is the mechanism behind every pickle, every preserved pepper, every fermented vegetable you might need to make when fresh produce becomes unavailable. You can also use white vinegar as a cleaning disinfectant and a basic water treatment aid. Large gallon jugs of vinegar are becoming harder to find consistently. I checked 7 stores last month. 3 of them were out of gallon jugs. 2 had limits of 2 per customer. The demand is increasing because more people are preserving food at home, and the supply infrastructure for large format vinegar has not scaled to match. I currently have 30 gallons stored. 10 white, 10 apple cider, 5 red wine, 5 rice. Total cost was about $90 for a product with infinite shelf life and that many uses. $90 is almost nothing. Food number 7, white sugar in 25 and 50-pound bags. I was at a warehouse club about 6 months ago and I watched something that stuck with me. A man, probably in his 60s, was loading a flatbed cart with 2 50-pound bags of sugar and 4 smaller bags of brown sugar. Methodical, calm, no urgency, like he had done this before. I caught up with him in the parking lot and asked him directly what he knew that I did not. He looked at me for a second and then said, "Sugar is the one thing people always forget until they cannot get it. Then it becomes the one thing everyone wants." He was not wrong. Sugar prices have been rising steadily for 2 years. The bulk sizes are now frequently out of stock or limited to 1 bag per customer at the warehouse clubs where I shop. I used to see pallets of 50-pound bags. Now I see a few bags and a limit sign. Sugar is not just about sweetness. It is a preservative. Without sugar, you cannot make jams, jellies, or candied fruits that last without refrigeration. It is a concentrated calorie source. 1 tablespoon is about 50 calories of immediate energy in a physical labor situation that matters, and it is a barter item with extraordinary psychological value. In prolonged crisis situations, historically, sugar and coffee become some of the most traded commodities because people crave comfort. Having extra sugar means having something other people desperately want. Sugar lasts indefinitely when stored dry, completely indefinitely. I keep mine in the original bags inside food-grade buckets with tight lids to block moisture and pests. I currently have 150 pounds. I also keep separate brown sugar and powdered sugar because they serve different cooking functions. Brown sugar adds depth to savory dishes. Powdered sugar for baking. A homemade cake or cookies on a hard day is not a luxury. It is a morale tool, and morale is a survival resource. Food number 8, dried mushrooms, shiitake, and porcini. This one sounds like a specialty item. It is not. This is one of the highest value survival foods hiding in plain sight, and it is getting harder to find at a reasonable price. I discovered the real power of dried mushrooms about 6 months ago when I was doing a cost per nutrition analysis of my entire stockpile. 1 pound of dry shiitake mushrooms costs about $13. When you rehydrate that 1 pound in hot water for 20 minutes, it becomes 8 pounds of mushrooms, 8 to 1. And the water left over from rehydration is a rich, flavorful broth you can use immediately. You are essentially getting the mushrooms and the broth in one package. Dried mushrooms are a source of vitamins B, D, selenium, and potassium. In a long-term food storage situation where you are living off rice, beans, and grains, you're going to be missing micronutrients. Dried mushrooms fill gaps that almost nothing else in a typical prep pantry addresses. They also contain natural umami compounds that make everything taste like real food. I tested this rice cooked in shiitake soaking liquid versus rice cooked in plain water. My family chose the shiitake version every time without knowing which was which. Shelf life is 5 to 10 years stored properly in glass mason jars or mylar bags with oxygen absorbers in a cool, dark place. I have 10 pounds of various types right now. Total cost was about $130. That 10 pounds represents 80 pounds of rehydrated mushrooms plus gallons of mushroom broth. The value per dollar is remarkable. Dried mushrooms are already getting harder to find at grocery stores, specialty varieties especially. The supply chains are long and fragile, and import disruptions hit this category hard. The time to buy is before that difficulty becomes a genuine shortage. Food number 9, cooking oil, gallon jugs. 2 years ago, I paid $6 for a gallon jug of vegetable oil. Last month, the same jug cost $13, more than double. And it is not just the price. 3 times in the last 3 months, I went to a store and the large containers were completely gone. This is happening because global cooking oil supply is under pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. Sunflower oil production was severely disrupted by the war in Ukraine. Ukraine and Russia together were responsible for more than half of global sunflower oil exports. Palm oil is facing environmental restrictions. Soybean oil prices are rising with grain prices. These pressures are all hitting at the same time. Here is why fat deserves more attention than almost anything else in your stockpile. Your body cannot function without dietary fat. Most core prepper foods have almost zero fat. Rice has none. Beans have a trace amount. If you eat a diet without fat for more than a few weeks, you will develop serious health problems: fatigue, brain fog, hormonal disruption, immune failure. Fat is not optional. 1 tablespoon of cooking oil provides about 120 calories of pure fat. You can add it to rice, beans, grain dishes, anything. It changes the nutritional profile completely and makes food taste significantly better. The challenge is that oil does not store indefinitely. Most vegetable oils last about 2 years unopened in a cool, dark place. Once opened, about a year. Rancid oil is not just unpleasant, it will make you sick, and the smell contaminates everything near it. My solution is a first in, first out shelf system. I line my oil jugs on a dedicated shelf, oldest on the left, newest on the right. Every time I cook, I pull from the left. When a jug empties, I buy a replacement and place it on the far right. I never have to think about what to rotate. The system runs itself. Right now, I have 9 jugs in that line. My oil is always fresh, and I always have close to a year's supply without any special effort. I also keep 3 gallons of coconut oil separately as a longer-term backup. Coconut oil lasts 2 to 3 years or more and is significantly more stable than plant-based oils because of its saturated fat composition. It solidifies at room temperature, which slows oxidation. The flavor is distinct and it costs more. But as a last resort fat reserve, nothing beats its shelf life at a reasonable price. Food number 10. Miso paste in sealed containers. I need to tell you about something I discovered at an Asian grocery store that most preppers have completely ignored. Miso paste, the fermented soybean paste used in Japanese cooking. I walked past it for 2 years and never picked it up. Then I talked to a chef who had spent time cooking in Japan, and what she told me made me go back and buy 8 containers that same day. Miso paste contains live probiotic bacteria, protein, B vitamins, and minerals in a single ingredient. But the reason it belongs in a survival pantry is the combination of salt concentration and fermentation that makes it extraordinarily shelf stable. In a refrigerator, miso paste lasts for years. At room temperature, the high salt content preserves it for months. I'm currently using miso paste that is 3 years old, and it is still excellent. 1 tablespoon dissolved in hot water makes instant miso soup. Add dried mushrooms, and you have a complete, nutritious, deeply satisfying meal from 2 ingredients. Miso also transforms rice, beans, and grain dishes in ways that nothing else does. It provides depth of flavor that prevents palate fatigue, which is the invisible enemy in any long-term food storage situation. Miso paste is about $7 per container at most Asian grocery stores. I have 8 containers, 4 in my refrigerator being rotated into daily use, and 4 in cool storage as backup. Total investment was about $55 for a product that provides probiotics, protein, and flavor depth. That combination does not exist in any other single item at that price point. Food number 11, cream of tartar. Most people reading the label on cream of tartar think it is a niche baking ingredient for fancy recipes. It is not. It is a baking system that makes you independent from 2 products that are already disappearing from shelves. I discovered this about a year ago when I started pressure testing my stockpile for single points of failure. Here's what I mean. Half a teaspoon of cream of tartar combined with half a teaspoon of baking soda is chemically identical to 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You can bake bread, biscuits, muffins, and pancakes with no commercial baking powder at all. And when you mix cream of tartar with regular milk, you get a functional substitute for buttermilk, one ingredient that replaces two. I tested this across 6 different recipes over the course of a month. Every single result was excellent. Nobody in my household noticed anything different. The supply situation is getting interesting. Cream of tartar is a byproduct of wine production, primarily from Italy, Spain, and France. It is harvested from the inside of wine barrels during fermentation. International shipping disruptions and reduced wine production in drought years have made supply inconsistent. I spoke with the owner of a specialty baking shop near me who said her wholesale orders for cream of tartar have become unreliable in the last 8 months. She's buying further ahead than she used to just to keep it in stock. The shelf life is indefinite, completely indefinite. I have some that is 5 years old and it performs identically to fresh. 1 pound costs about $15. I store 3 pounds, which represents hundreds of baking applications. 3 pounds of cream of tartar and a standard container of baking soda make you functionally independent from commercial baking powder for years. The people who understand redundancy in a food system are stocking this right now. It is not dramatic. It is not exciting. It is a quiet insurance policy that costs $45 and lasts forever. Before you click away, I need you to hear this clearly. I am not telling you to panic. Panic is what other people do. What I am telling you is to act while acting is still quiet, boring, and unremarkable. The people who understand real supply chains know that shortages do not announce themselves. They creep. One product disappears. Then the brand you trusted disappears. Then the whole category becomes unreliable. By the time that pattern becomes news, the people who were paying attention 6 months earlier are sitting on full pantries watching everyone else scramble. That is the position I want you in. Not scared, not hoarding everything in one frantic afternoon, just quietly, systematically adding 1 or 2 items from this list every time you go to a store. 3 stores from now, you will have made a meaningful start. 6 stores from now, you will have a real buffer. Here's what I want you to do specifically. Write down 3 items from this list right now, just 3. The next time you go shopping, find those 3 items and add 1 extra of each to your cart. That is it. 1 extra, not a cart clearing emergency run, 1 extra item. Repeat that on your next trip with 2 different items from the list. Do this quietly. Do this calmly. Do this without talking about it at the register. I will keep tracking this. I will keep walking into stores in different states and different neighborhoods and watching what the shelves are doing before the headlines say anything. If you want to be the person who already knows when everyone else is just finding out, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next time I walk into a store and see something I was not expecting, you are going to be the first person I tell. Stay steady, stay ahead, take care of your people.